Hello friends and welcome back. So hope now based on the previous session you have a now good understanding of what exactly is the infrastructure as a code and what is Terraform, what are the benefits of Terraform and where exactly we use the Terraform. So far we have discussed a lot about the provisioning of the hardwares and then different softwares, okay? But we have a different set of tools which is categorized in the infrastructure as a code. Okay, it depends on what kind of a configurations we are going to perform, whether we are doing some kind of a software configurations, we are doing the software installations, or we are doing the infrastructure configurations, or maybe we are going to configure some containerized based applications where we have certain kind of a containers, or where we are going to create certain images. So based on the different set of requirement of your infrastructure, we have a different categories of the tools. Okay, and here you will get a clarity exactly on where exactly we are using the Terraform. Although it has a functionality to configure the software as well, okay, but preferably and mostly we use Terraform for end-to-end provisioning or setup of the infrastructure. Okay, so let us begin with the session. So type of infrastructure as a code tool. So infrastructure as code tool can be grouped based on what they manage in infrastructure, right? So in the infrastructure, we have a multiple things. We have a different hardware resources. We have a softwares. We have a different applications. Then we do the different kind of a configuration changes in our hardware, in our OS, in our software applications, right? So that means we are doing the continuous configuration of the softwares, hardwares, networking configurations, and multiple things, right? So now based on what kind of a configurations that you need to perform in your infrastructure, based on that requirements, we choose a particular tool. Okay. So now, for example, you are going to configure the servers. You are going to create the infrastructure resources. Maybe you are going to install the softwares. You are going to build the machine images, or maybe you are going to configure the containers. Okay. So container is a feature where we group everything inside a single image. Okay, so maybe I'm sure you heard about the Docker container, okay, container D. So these are the containerized applications. So what we do actually in the container, so this is a container. Okay, so this contain all your application softwares and the corresponding dependencies as well. Okay, and whenever we need to move the code from one environment to other environment, so what we do, we move the containers. Okay, and with respect to each and every container, we have a image. Okay, so now depend on your requirement. If you are going to configure some set of servers, or maybe you are going to configure some other infrastructure resources, you are going to building the machine images, you are going to build the manage the containerized environment. So based on that, we have a different set of tools that we can use. Okay, so that means the classification of infrastructure as a code tools is generally are based on the configuration management, infrastructure management, image-based infrastructure tool, container-based infrastructure tool. Okay, and each category solves the different set of infrastructure problems. So now if we talk about the configuration management tool, so what exactly we are doing in the configuration management tool? These tools are used to install software and configure servers automatically. So basically, as I said, we have the hardware soft infrastructure like the virtual machines, then operating systems. Then if we are in a cloud, then we have a different VPCs, we have a subnet, we have a different kind of a network security rules, right? So apart from that, once the base infrastructure is ready, our requirement is to install the different set of software, and which include the different set of configurations, right? So if you have the requirement of the configuration management that you want to install and configure the different softwares, okay, for that we use some configuration management tools which include the Ansible, Chef, and Puppet. So common example tasks are installing a web server, or maybe installing an application servers, updating the software packages, managing your system configuration. So these kind of a requirement are specifically categorized in the configuration management, and these are the certain tools that we use in the situation. They have some extra capabilities as well. If I talk about the Ansible, okay, so this Ansible can be used for the configuration of your infrastructure as well, which include your like the virtual machines of configurations. Okay, but as we discussed so far, once the environment get increased, the complexity of environment get increased with the multiple resources, okay, then in that case, this tool may not be good choice for the infrastructure management. And in that case, we have to go for the Terraform, right? So, but these are the categories and these are certain tools that you can utilize if you have a requirement of the configuration management. Now, infrastructure provisioning tool. So here where the Terraform comes in picture, where we want to configure the infrastructure related resources. Okay. For example, you are going to configure the virtual machines. You are going to configure the network resources, your storage, your load balancer. So what these kind of a infrastructure requirement, we use the different tools. Okay. So these are the certain tools that we utilize. Terraform is one of them, which is we are covering in this course. Then we have AWS Cloud Formation. Then we have Pulumi. So there are multiple other softwares are there, or you can say the multiple different infrastructure, the tool softwares are available for the infrastructure provisioning. And Terraform is one of the most widely used tool for multi-cloud infrastructure provisioning. Multi-cloud means if you have the requirement where you want to configure the multiple services on the multiple cloud service providers, okay, where you may have a certain set of resources in the AWS cloud, you have a certain set of resources in the Azure cloud or maybe in the Google cloud or some other cloud service provider. Okay, you want to maintain the multiple cloud infrastructure with the help of Terraform, okay, that we can achieve easily. And that's the reason the Terraform is one of the most widely used infrastructure as a tool. Okay, now fourth one is the image based infrastructure tool. So as I said, uh, we have one option where we can create the complete end-to-end image of your machine. Okay, so this image contain your complete set of softwares, all the required dependencies, including a base operating system. Okay, so these are the few things that is covered in your image. So we create one image which contain your small base operating system, all your softwares, application, and the complete requirement dependencies inside a single package. So what are the benefit of image is whenever we need to configure some new environments, we need to scale our environment, we need to scale up or down our environment. Okay, so we can easily create the new infrastructure based on the images. Okay, we don't need to install every software dependencies, configurations, integration from scratch. We just take the image, we copy this image in the new servers, okay, and then we start the containers based on this particular image. Okay, so for if you have a such kind of a requirement where you need to use image based infrastructure tool, so we have a packer which is again from the HashiCorp. Okay, and then with the help of this packer you can create a base images which contain everything at a single place. The fourth one is the container base. So container is a runtime instances of your images. So what we have learned in the previous slide, we have learned about the images. Okay, images which contain a base operating system, your all the softwares plus your applications and the dependencies. Everything is packed inside a single image. So this image we transferred from one server to other server, and based on this image we can spin up the containers, which is a runtime object of your particular image. Okay, so if you have this kind of a requirement where you need to use the containerized environment, specifically we use with the Dockers, we use with the containerd, and these containerized environments we maintain with the help of Kubernetes, which is an orchestration tool that we use for maintaining your containerized systems. So if you have a requirement where you wanted to use the containerized based infrastructure, okay, so these are the certain tools that we can utilize. Kubernetes manifests are there. You can use the Helm as well. Okay, so these are the certain tools that we can use based on the container based infrastructure requirement. So that means when we say the different tools that are available in the infrastructure as a code, so it completely depend on your requirements. Whether you are going for a software installation configurations, you are going for an infrastructure configurations, you have a requirement of image based tools, you have a requirement of container based tools. So based on that, we can opt for the different tools, but specifically when you have a requirement of infrastructure provisioning, then we always go with the Terraform, which is most widely used infrastructure provisioning tool as of today.